On this Iran situation this afternoon, the so-called Gang of Eight includes the likes of Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Kevin McCarthy, the leaders in Congress in both the House and the Senate of both parties. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, defending the strike that's been at the source of a lot of this controversy, saying that Iran will not get a nuclear weapon no matter what.
If you're looking for imminence, you needn't look no further than the days that led up to the strike that was taken against Soleimani. And then you, in addition to that, have what we could clearly see were continuing efforts on behalf of this terrorist to build out a network of campaign activities that were going to lead potentially to the death of many more Americans. In the event the Iranians make another bad choice, that President will respond in a way that he did last week. I know that the efforts that we have taken, not only last week with the strike against Soleimani, but the strategy that we've employed has saved American lives.
All right, so what happens next, and what are we worried about what would happen next, especially when the Iranians are already talking about a swift and immediate response? Former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense under President Bush 43, former World Bank President Paul Wolfowitz on all of that. Ambassador, always good having you. You know, Iran is making it very clear they're not going to not respond. So how far do you think they push it? What do you think they're up to?
Look, I think both sides don't want to see a larger war, and I think that's going to lead to some restraint. But they keep saying they're going to respond at a time and place of their choosing, which I suppose is consistent with the idea that revenge is a meal that's best eaten cold, as they say. But I think it's very important to keep an eye on Iraq itself. I know everybody's thinking about the possibility of violent actions by Iran. And by the way, a lot of them might have already been planned by Soleimani before he was killed. It's not like they're necessarily responding to us. But I think the really important stake right now is to maintain our position in Iran. It would be Iraq, excuse me. It would be an enormous victory for Iran if they were able to see us leave.
Let me ask you a little bit. Much has been said of the fact that other presidents, including your old boss, President Bush, had a chance to take out Soleimani, but did not. Much to say the same about President Obama. There must have been a reason for that. What was it?
Look, I think a lot has to do with threat and opportunity. If Bush had had that kind of opportunity to take out bin Laden, I'm sure he would have. Instead, all we had were these missile strikes at tents in the middle of nowhere. There was, for a while, a thought that maybe it could be done with an American drone. And by the way, if that had been done, it would not have stopped the 9/11 attacks. Then the 9/11 attacks would have seemed like a response to killing bin Laden, actually.
But what about in the case of Soleimani?
We shouldn't think that everything the Iranians do now is a response.
I apologize. In the case of Soleimani, were there opportunities there that, and he wasn't as high-ranking as he was, a little more than a few days ago when he was taken out, but were there efforts on the part of the Bush administration to go after this guy to the degree that this administration ultimately did?
Look, I'm not aware of them. I wasn't around, I think, during his most active period, and that actually came after Bush. But to get this guy with his #1 henchman on an empty road in the middle of the night when no civilians are going to be killed is a rare opportunity. And believe me, if we had not done that, let me say two things. If we had not done that, I think all the leakers would be coming out of the woodwork saying that Trump just missed an incredible opportunity because he wasn't up to it. And I'll say one other thing pretty confidently. If Obama were president now, we wouldn't be seeing this kind of debate about what was done. A lot of it is very personal.
And it is during election year. Quite right about that, Ambassador. There are many who are advocating reining in the president's war powers. What do you think of that?
I'm not sure what they have in mind. There are a lot of constraints on it already, and including his own bureaucracy and his own military, who are not particularly trigger happy. And let's remember, we got to this point in part because there'd been, I don't know exactly the count, but somewhere between 5 and 10 significant Iranian provocations, including drone strikes on some of the most important oil facilities in the world. And we only responded with economic sanctions, and a lot of people were saying we were being too mild. I think in hindsight we did it about right, and I think this was the time to do something rapid and bold.
Ambassador, you touched on the outset here that the Iraqis want us out. And they say that those who have expressed that in the form of a resolution mean what they say, and they do want us out. Let's just dispense with the notion whether that does reflect the view of all the Iraqis. That's debatable. What would happen if we left?
I mean, let's start with the fact that almost half the parliament members boycotted that session because they didn't want to vote the way it was going to be voted. So it's not an overwhelming majority, even of the parliament. And I think look, they've suffered enormously from Soleimani. In fact, I've seen estimates that as many as 500 Iraqi Shia, not Iraqi Sunni protesters have been shot in the back in his campaign to put down these protests that were mounted against the government recently. It's a very complicated political situation there. I don't think we understand it very well. I know we don't. And I would say one other thing. He's not just another military leader. He was an incredibly terrifying force. I think a lot of them were desperately afraid of him and can't be sorry to see him gone. And they may behave differently over time. I think they see us in many ways as protecting them. But then I would have one word of caution for President Trump, which is I think we need to be very careful about our language. We shouldn't threaten them. We shouldn't talk about bombing cultural sites. And I think we should recognize the fact more frequently than we do that, yes, he killed a lot of Americans, but he killed many more Iraqis and many more Syrians and probably many more Iranians also.
All right.
He was an equal opportunity killer.
That he was, and into the thousands when all is said and done. Ambassador Paul Wolfowitz, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, in the meantime,